everybody. So what I'm about to talk about with you today, I wish I knew a few years ago. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to read more books that you actually enjoy reading. I can tell you how to do this because that is what I have spent the last year and a half trying to figure out. So stay until the end if you are ready to embark on this journey the right way, the easy way, the efficient way. If you're like me, maybe reading was much more fun as a kid. But why is it that when we became adults, it suddenly became not as fun? It seemed like a chore. It was like, ugh, I can't find anything I like. Maybe when we were kids and we kind of had a smaller pool of choices for our age range. So you had middle grade, you had elementary school grade level books, and mostly these were focused on growing up. These were focused on learning new things, navigating childhood. And then as teens, we have some fun YA. But by the time that we're growing out of that, and we're adults, we're suddenly overwhelmed with so many choices. And this is personally why I believe I put off reading so much as I got older. So again, the question is, why do we feel like it's not as fun as an adult? And it's because we don't know what we like because there are so many choices. And we don't know how to really hone in and narrow down on those choices. I wanted to make this video for you all because I wish I had this information and we're in a little bit more of a formal podcast like setup, because I want the audio to be super crisp for you guys to really be able to get these tips in. So our tastes are always changing too. So carry this advice with you throughout your reading journey, throughout life. And eventually it's going to be second nature. But when you're first starting this out, it might seem like a lot, but I promise you it is worth it. So if you make it to the end, let me know which tip was the most insightful for you. The first tip is actually also a rule, maybe the shortest. If you can only follow one for now, it's don't focus on the numbers. Don't focus on the numbers of books you're reading, numbers of pages, numbers of minutes. Don't focus on numbers. Focus on enjoyment and focus on quality. Tip number 2 is I want you to start out by choosing 1 to 3 safe genres for you to experiment with for your book reading taste. So if you're just getting into reading or you've never been into reading as an adult before, there's still a good chance that you have some general idea of what you're drawn to when it comes to media. So what are you drawn to when it comes to music, movies, shows? It actually might not always correlate with your book taste, which makes it actually a little bit harder to figure out for yourself what you're looking for when it comes to your next read. So I personally thought that what I liked in movies and shows was going to correlate almost exactly to my book taste. So this is partially why I struggled to find books that I liked for several months at a time and eventually would drop reading for another few months, pick it back up, give up, because I wasn't hitting that jackpot. So I personally started out with romantic comedy, rom-coms, lit fic, literary fiction, and mystery and thrillers as my first 1 to 3 safe genres. So rom-com was not working out for me. Somehow mystery and thriller really landed for me. But that's super interesting because I don't watch too much mystery and thriller on TV. I watch a little bit of rom-com here and there, but it doesn't translate for me book-wise. Rom-com did not translate for me book-wise. I did not realize that, first of all, yeah, I would watch a little bit of mystery and thriller. Yeah, I would watch some rom-com here and there, but I didn't realize what I was reading was almost like Hallmarky Lifetime movie-ish rom-coms that I don't tend to be super drawn to. So then I learned, okay, books included, not drawn to that. Unless there's deeper elements discussed within a romance book. So I was able to kind of understand deeper that maybe I'm not actually looking for a rom-com. Maybe I'm looking for more of a contemporary romance. But it has to have those elements that I really appreciate. There are some elements that really enhance the romance reading experience for me, and that is things like mental health, discussing anxiety, mental health issues amongst dating, amongst romance, it doesn't even necessarily have to be within the romance, but it could just be mental health is discussed. It could also be magical realism. I recently read The 7-Year Slip, and the book I was referring to previously was Yours Truly. There was a lot of mental health discussion, which I appreciated. And then 7-Year Slip was a lot of magical realism. And I really appreciate magical realism in general. So you add that to romance and you get a whole slew of beautiful messages about time, about space, about reality, and how that can play a part in a romance. And that to me, I really appreciate. So maybe I'm actually looking for more of a contemporary romance, but it has to have those elements like the themes, the subplots, the settings, the tropes, the atmosphere, etc. It has to be what I like and it has to be embedded in the story. So we'll get to that a little bit later, but I knew that literary fiction from the beginning was a little bit more up my alley, but I still had that issue where I would get bored with not all of my book choices, but a lot of my choices. And I just had this feeling that I could definitely narrow it down a lot more. Now that you have some of those safe genres, tip number 3 is to get on either Goodreads or Storygraph, especially for the TBR, which stands for to be read list feature. I personally prefer Goodreads. I have both Goodreads and Storygraph. Personally, I prefer Goodreads. What you're going to do is you're only going to put books that you plan to read in that list. Not books that you think sound good, not covers that you think are pretty. Only put books in those lists that you plan to read within the next year or 2 max. If you're like, yeah, I'll read that book one day, and you can't say exactly when you would like to read that book, don't put it to your list. If you can look at a book and say, oh, I want to read that in a few weeks. Oh, I'll read that maybe after I read like these other books that I really, really want to read. Or if you're like, oh, that'd be a perfect book to read in November, December, like October for your mood reading, for your seasonal reading. Okay, cool, add it. Only books you plan to read within a year or 2 max though. So then you're going to keep up with that list and you're going to update what you read once you've hit like the year mark of a book being in your list, or you've had the list for a year, but kind of keep a little mental note of like, okay, these books have been in my list for a hot minute, and note, okay, a year has passed. What did I put in my list like a year ago or over a year? What's been sitting in my list for years? If you already have a Goodreads, you probably have already read the books that you really want to read within the year. So you can probably reassess and just start deleting books that you've lost interest in since adding them to your list. There's probably a reason you lost interest. Other interesting new releases are coming out. You're just finding maybe more curated things. And you're like, oh, I know what I like. I'm understanding my taste better. This sounds better. This sounds better. And there's going to be a few books on that list that you are kind of just bound to have lost interest in. So note that and just keep your list pretty clean and clear so you know exactly what it is that you're interested in for the future. And then definitely really note the books that you were pulled to first from your TBR list and mentally note what caught your eye before reading a book. Like mentally note what made you add a book to the TBR list. And that's going to give you some indication of what you're drawn to, what your taste is. Later, we'll actually talk about noting things that you've fully followed through on reading. This is just a mental note of like what made me add it to the list. Okay, so tip number 4 now, still related to the TBR list subject, is to keep your TBR list small. Mood reading, in my opinion, is definitely how it should be. If you're forcing yourself to read certain things in certain orders, it's going to start to feel like a chore. It's going to start to feel like high school literature class, and it's going to feel like a chore. High school literature was one of my favorite subjects, and I didn't even read all the books that we were assigned. So if you have an order that you feel like is going to be intuitive to your mood in the very short-term future, that's totally fine. Maybe keep that little order, but be flexible, willing to change things up. That's what I do right now that I'm making more videos. I definitely really want to finish my physical TBR so that I can truly, truly mood read, because I think that is personally the way to go if you want to enjoy your reading experience and find more books that you actually enjoy reading. Okay, tip number 5, however you choose to do it, rate and make note of some small things you liked and disliked about a book. This doesn't need to be a deep reflection. It doesn't need to be a whole long book report. This can be in your head if that's something you're good at, if that works for you, but I suggest the notes app in your phone, Google Keep, whatever you use, or telling a friend, since that kind of helps you ingrain your thoughts to memory. Like if you have another friend that likes books, talk books with them, because it's going to ingrain your thoughts and opinions about your previous reads into your mind. You'll be able to kind of like voice your likes and dislikes about a book, or write a quick Goodreads review with your ratings on Goodreads. Write a quick review or jot down your rating on the back of a book cover, or like your quick thoughts on the back of a book cover. Annotate, it doesn't matter. Rate your books and give your book a rating and briefly note some thoughts. Not just one, not just the other, both. You have to do both. So the rating system, I use like 1 to 5 stars. It's kind of intuitive. Once you start, you might be like, is this accurate? I don't know. I don't have a lot to compare it to, but it should kind of feel intuitive. And once you read a little bit more and more, you'll really be easily like able to give your book a rating at the end. You're going to be able to be like, oh, was it 4.25, 4.5? Was that a pure 5? You'll kind of know. It's just sort of how you personally rate other things. Like you go to a restaurant and you're thinking in your head, what would I rate this? Just kind of do that with your reads. You'll kind of understand with more experience. But things that you can make note of when you are taking these notes, some of the things I liked to think about at the very beginning were, did I like or dislike this author, this genre, this subgenre? Did I like or dislike the mood or the vibe? Were there tropes in there that I liked or didn't like? Character traits that I enjoyed reading about in characters that I'm reading about. Do I have to like the characters or not? Were there themes that I enjoyed? Topics that were discussed that I appreciated? Did I like the writing style, the time period, the season in which it took place? Was it plot driven? Was it character driven? Those are some of the ones that I looked at first. That's kind of a lot. So I don't know if I think of any more, maybe I'll pop them on the screen. But I personally learned this year that I am not a YA girl anymore. Even when I was a teen, I don't know that was kind of when I started reading a little bit less and less. So I guess I've grown up since then, since being a teen, obviously, because I'm an adult now, but I am not in a YA anymore. Hasn't been working for me. This past year or so, I have incorporated that as part of the process of figuring out what I like. I've incorporated a few YA reads and they never work for me for the most part. So I am done wasting my time there unless there's a few exceptions and I'm really drawn to it. So keep that in mind for future reading. If you don't know how to put your thoughts about books to words, watch some more booktubers, maybe to kind of like familiarize yourself with book language and book terms, and just keep talking about the books you're reading and you'll kind of get a better feel for how to explain things and explain your opinions, which is always satisfying. Tip number 6 is to apply your thoughts of past books to future book browsing. So go to your local bookstore, do your online browsing with the notes that you took from the previous step in mind, and go and thoroughly read that synopsis on the back and measure if there's more elements in the book that you enjoy versus dislike. So ideally, you'd like the ratio of elements you like versus dislike to be very high. When you read the back of a book, like, oh, well, you know, it's a romance, but I hate this trope. I hate enemies to lovers, or I hate best friend's brother. Like, I don't like those tropes, but, oh, it takes place during the Christmas time. So is there more things that you like about it or that you dislike about it? And note that you want what you like to be high. Maybe there's 1 or 2 things that you're like, oh no, I'm not into that, but the rest of it sounds great, so I'm into it. So cool, keep note of that. If you're disliking all of it, no. But if you're liking all of it, great, green light, go for it. And if you really want to narrow this down, I highly recommend, and you might not like doing this, but trust me, it works, to ensure that you're picking the best choices for you. Check the book you want to read on Goodreads and challenge yourself to only go for the books that are rated 4 stars or above. I personally like to try and do above a 4.1 or a 4.2 stars. Some people might not like this because they think maybe you'll miss out on something you'd actually really like that's not that popular, or that indie author or that up-and-coming author that's still perfecting their craft, yada yada. But this video is for people that are trying to find more books that they actually like faster and efficiently. If you already know what you like and you're watching this, then keep reading the books of whatever rating they are. I still consider myself to be somewhat in the discovery phase of my taste. I mean, I think we always kind of are, but I still consider myself to be a little bit in that discovery phase. I haven't certainly read everything that's out there or like a taste of everything that's out there, so I want to still try and do this, especially for those new reads and stuff like that. If it's I'm branching out, I want it to be a highly rated book. Sometimes I don't do this, but when I do, I literally usually never ever regret it because for the most part, I'm enjoying what I'm reading when I go for the highly rated books that are curated to what I'm knowing I'm gonna like. Okay, point number 7 is, it's a small point, but very important. Note the authors that you're enjoying. Note the authors and read more of their books if they sound enjoyable to you. So it could be an author has some books that you enjoy and they have some other books that you found were just okay. But you could strike gold if you keep repeating books from authors that you know you read one book and you really liked it. So that could turn into an author that you keep going back to and you're always going to pick up their books. So either way, it's helping you to curate your taste and you can't really go wrong. So a few of these authors for me are, I haven't read all of their books, but Ruth Ware, I always go back to. I feel like she's safe for me. Do I love every single one of her books? No. I love a lot of her books though. Freida McFadden, I have enjoyed pretty much every book I've read from hers. And Taylor Jenkins Reid. Do I think she's also only had incredible books? No, I have read books from Taylor Jenkins Reid that I have been like, what is this? But for the most part, I really have had amazing experiences reading books by those authors. So I make sure that I keep going back to them. I feel as though I can read most of their books. You know, you like trust their work. So that's a good sign. Tip number 8 is also kind of small. Read books that your friends love and rate 4 stars or over. If your friend is saying that a book is okay or it's not great, but you think you'd like it, trust me, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. It's already a little bit slightly tainted, your perception of that book, knowing that your friend didn't give that book a high rating. And just move on. Ask your friends about those 4 or 5-star book ratings and go for those. I know maybe you and your friends don't have similar tastes. Maybe you and your friends are completely different. You have wildly different tastes. I personally don't think that matters when you're in this discovery phase. Read books that your friends like because it's going to have a more fond place in your heart. It's going to be easier to get into if you know they enjoyed it. And if you know they didn't enjoy it, like I said, perception tainted. Move on. Like, even if you don't think it is and you're like, I could still get into it, little subconscious feeling, it's going to eat away while you're reading the book. I just say go for your friends' highly rated picks. Tip number 9, slowly incorporate now at this point new genres and moods to kind of test the waters. So just trickle these in here and there. So every few months, try something highly rated, but a little bit different from what you like, but still with some elements of what you find intriguing from other reads. So if it's a new genre, you might not know some of the elements that this genre contains, but try your best to kind of apply what you know from other genres and see if it fits somehow. If not, you might be kind of like starting this discovery process over with this new genre. It sounds hard, but really it's not. Like, at this point, this process of understanding your taste should be becoming a little bit of like a second nature now. Don't bother too much with things you know you don't like unless there's some decent level of curiosity. So recently I kind of had like a back and forth interest with fantasy. I was like, people I love watching love fantasy. And I know a lot of people in my personal life who are just fantasy readers. Well, not a lot of people. I think I know like 2 people who they read, but they'll only read fantasy. And I was also interested in dystopian because I was interested in that when I was younger and I would do like the YA dystopian. So I was like, well, what about adult dystopian? And for me, I did try to dip my toe in fantasy recently with Fourth Wing, and you can watch my September-October wrap up to see what I thought about it. Did it go okay? Yes and no. I would say I'm still figuring out what it is that I would like about fantasy or if I would like it in general. So still in that discovery phase. But point is, I felt like I could be missing out when I would hear people talk about fantasy and dystopian. So those could be potential new genres to incorporate and test the waters with. Right now I have like no interest in historical romance or anything like extremely heavy, very focused on like traumatic events. That's just personally not where I'm at right now, but could be where I'm at in the future. I could be interested in the future. That's why you kind of got to like keep reassessing. But what do you feel sort of repelled by when you hear about it? Don't quite dip your toe there yet. Unless you're really like into very traumatic heavy content, I would say maybe dip your toe into something feel good every once in a while. I feel like it's good for your sanity. But you guys get the point. If you're feeling curious about something, maybe that's something in a few months you can incorporate. If you're repelled by it, don't go there. Point is to slowly incorporate new genres. It's not going to be like a huge interest, most likely. If it's a huge interest, it'll probably be back to point number 2 with your 1 to 3 safe genres. But the mild curiosity that comes in, that'll be the slowly incorporated new genres for you. The last 3 tips are other tips to kind of up your reading enjoyment. So not necessarily like discovering those books that you actually really enjoy reading. This is going to be a little bit more of like, hopefully you're reading books that you really enjoy, and these tips are just going to add to your reading experience and help you really have a good time. Tip number 10 is to set the vibe and the mood and the atmosphere and the ambiance and the aesthetic and all the synonyms you can think of. See if you can learn how to read with music, because this is going to change the game and it's really going to create an immersive experience for you while reading your book. There are tons, and I mean tons of Spotify playlists that are based on books. If a book is somewhat popular, there is probably a Spotify playlist for it. And it's probably a highly liked and hearted playlist. It's probably actually really good. I have found some amazing playlists and some awesome new music just from doing this and having music play kind of in the background of my headphones. Doesn't need to be blasting, doesn't need to be super loud. Just see if you can kind of get in the zone while reading a little bit, because it does actually help you read faster. I don't have any statistics and studies on hand, but I do know that it's proven that like reading with music, if you can read with music and learn how to do it, helps you read faster and helps you actually retain the story a little bit better. And with this, definitely just like get everything you need to get ready before you sit down to read. So like go to the restroom, get your water, get your drink of choice, put on some ambient music or ambiance videos for the background, get super comfy. If you want to get a blanket, if you get cold, get your blanket, layers, get layered up if you get hot. Throw on some headphones so you don't have that many interruptions, and you will be set to dive in. It's probably going to add to your enjoyment of the book, and you might even decide you want to settle in for several more hours than you anticipated, because that's what's happened to me in the past when I really set the vibe right. Tip number 11 is do not be afraid to DNF books. DNF means did not finish. Learn how to DNF books. This was so hard for me because the OCD need to complete things in me was strong, but I had to kill that. Okay? Give yourself to about 30% way through the book, and if you're not interested in what's happening, you're not able to focus, you're not feeling any sense of enjoyment, DNF. Don't finish it. It's the perfect spot because you're not halfway yet and you haven't committed that much, but like even if you're 70% of the way through and you want a DNF, then go for it. I've done that before. Do it when it feels right. DNF your book when it feels right. You'll know it when you're like almost fed up. Don't force yourself. You're just going to kill the vibe. You'll probably put yourself in a reading slump, and it's not worth it. You want to have fun. And if you DNF, you'll just be on to the next book, and you'll just have more chances of finding that next book that you actually like. So don't be afraid to do that. Tip number 12 is to experiment with different forms of reading. This step can be applied at any point in the process, really, but as you get a better idea of your taste, see if there's increased enjoyment in like reading on paperback versus hardcover. Do you read faster on a Kindle? Do you stay more focused on a Kindle? I do. Do you like audiobooks or do you not? I didn't like them at first. I'm getting a little bit more used to them now that they're on Spotify Premium. Do you like buddy reading with friends? Do you want your friend near you reading the same book, a different book, sitting at a cafe and reading with a friend? Or is that distracting to you? Do you enjoy book clubs? Do you find them boring? Do you want to join a Discord server where people are like doing reading sprints? I've never done that, but I know people do. Well, you'll have your preferences. You'll find them eventually. Let those guide your experience because it's just going to make it a lot more fun for you. And then my last and final tip is to take reading breaks. Whether it's a few days or a week, whatever feels good to you and how often you like to read, just take a few breathers from time to time if you feel like you want to, like if you feel like you're in that place. If you're not feeling excited and pumped to get into your next read, then maybe just wait a few days. It's going to help you not get burned out, especially in a culture where we feel like we have to do everything to the max. Just take a second and you'll kind of feel out in your mind and your body when you're just ready for that next read, when you're ready to get back into it. Take those breaks and you're going to keep being excited about reading rather than just burnt out to the extreme. So, yeah, those are all my tips for you guys. I definitely feel like I will have more tips up my sleeve in the future for finding more books that you actually like, for how to get back into reading. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. I make reading vlogs. I make just daily vlogs, just fun things, but mostly book related. And I am definitely interested in making more how-to videos for people who are interested in reading. So yeah, subscribe if you liked this. Let me know what your favorite tip is. Let me know if you already do these things. Let me know if you're going to start doing these things and how it is going for you down in the comments. Let me know. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.